They say in football, every play begins with a plan, but sometimes the moments that define legends are the ones that go completely off script. So what happens when the play that should have ended in disaster becomes the highlight of the season? What if one quarterback's stumble turns into a touchdown so absurd, so unbelievable, that fans are still asking, did that really just happen? This is the story of a single, chaotic play that turned into instant folklore, a play that took Trevor Lawrence from tripping over his own feet to diving into the end zone, leaving the NFL world stunned. There are moments in football that don't make sense until you see them in slow motion, moments where disaster transforms into destiny. For Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars, that moment arrived in a blur of confusion and brilliance. A play that began with a fumble and ended with a roar, a touchdown that felt like something scripted by fate. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. It was a simple goal line call, a few inches to glory. The snap came low, the pocket collapsed, and the quarterback every Jacksonville fan believed in stumbled forward. The ball slipped from his hands, defenders surged toward him, down, the crowd erupted in disbelief. A stumble had become a statement. A broken play had become one of the wildest touchdowns the NFL had ever seen. But what made it unforgettable wasn't just the athleticism, it was what it meant. To understand the emotion packed into that single play, you have to go back to who Trevor Lawrence was and what the Jaguars had been through. He wasn't an underdog, he was supposed to be a savior. The golden-haired prodigy from Clemson, a national champion, the first overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. From the moment he entered the league, people spoke his name alongside legends. He was the next Peyton, the next Luck, the chosen one who would lift a small-market team into greatness. But football doesn't care about hype. It humbles everyone. Lawrence's rookie season was a storm. The Jaguars were a team without direction, led by a head coach whose tenure imploded almost as soon as it began. Urban Meyer's chaotic leadership turned the locker room upside down, and Lawrence, still barely out of college, found himself trying to lead through controversy and confusion. Every Sunday, the weight on his shoulders grew heavier. Every loss chipped away at the fairy tale image. He finished that first season battered and bruised, both physically and mentally. For a player used to winning everything, failure felt foreign and unforgiving. Then came Doug Pederson, the man who would change everything. A Super Bowl-winning coach, Pederson walked into Jacksonville preaching patience and belief. He brought structure where there had been noise and calm where there had been chaos. He gave Trevor something he hadn't had since college: stability. Under Pederson, Lawrence rediscovered his confidence. The young quarterback who once looked overwhelmed began to play with purpose. The offense clicked, the locker room bought in, and the Jaguars began to look like a team with a heartbeat again. So when that fumble-turned-touchdown happened, it wasn't just luck, it was the culmination of months of growth, trust, and resilience. Late in a tight game, every inch mattered. The Jaguars lined up at the goal line. The call was simple: power through. But as the ball was snapped, disaster struck. Lawrence's foot caught on a lineman's ankle, the ball slipped from his hand, and time slowed. Defenders surged toward him, smelling blood. In that moment, most quarterbacks would have given up. Trevor didn't. In himself forward, bodies crashed, helmets collided, and Lawrence stretched the ball over the line just as he hit the turf. The stadium paused, then exploded. On the sideline, Pederson laughed and shook his head. "That's Trevor," he said later. "He never gives up on a play." In the post-game interview, Lawrence grinned. The kind of grin that comes from surviving chaos. "Yeah, I tripped, but we got in. That's all that matters." That answer told you everything about who he was becoming. No panic, no excuses, just calm execution in the middle of a storm. That play didn't just win points. It changed perception. It told fans that their quarterback could handle anything. It told teammates that the game wasn't over until he said it was. It told the league that Trevor Lawrence had arrived, not as the perfect prodigy, but as something better. a fighter. Because football isn't played in clean lines, it's fought for in the dirt, in the broken plays, in the milliseconds where instinct takes over. Rewatch that touchdown, and it feels almost cinematic. The stumble, the scoop, the dive, it's chaos choreographed into beauty. The still images tell the whole story. A quarterback mid-fall, eyes locked on the ball, body twisting, defenders lunging, and then the full extension dive across the line. In that frozen frame, you see everything the Jaguars had been through: the pain, the patience, and the payoff. The internet exploded. ESPN played the clip on loop, calling it a moment of madness turned into magic. Twitter flooded with disbelief. Fans shared slow-motion edits set to dramatic music. But underneath the entertainment, something real was happening. This wasn't just a viral highlight. It was a symbol of transformation. For Trevor, for the team, for the city. For Jacksonville, long trapped in cycles of heartbreak, the fumbled-to-fantasy touchdown felt like rebirth. It was a statement that this version of the Jaguars wouldn't fold when things went wrong. They'd find a way through. For Lawrence, it was validation. After a year of being doubted and questioned, this was the proof he could lead through chaos. Quarterbacks are measured by stats, sure, but greatness is measured in moments like this, the ones you can't coach, the ones that come from heart. Every replay revealed something new. One angle caught the look of sheer disbelief on defenders' faces as Lawrence lunged forward. Another showed the sideline erupting. Helmet was what separated him. That touchdown became more than a highlight. It became a turning point. The Jaguars used it as fuel. They built momentum, climbed back into playoff contention, and began to believe in themselves the way fans had always hoped they would. National analysts who once dismissed Jacksonville as a rebuilding project began to take notice. Commentators described Lawrence as the calmest quarterback in chaos. Defenses began preparing differently, knowing that even broken plays weren't safe. Inside the locker room, players started saying the same thing. That's who we are now. We fight through the stumble. That's what makes this story powerful. The play itself mirrors Trevor's entire journey, the stumble of his rookie season, the recovery under Pederson, and the stretch across the goal line as he claimed his place among the league's rising stars. Every franchise has its defining image. For the Jaguars, this was it. The stumble that became salvation, the chaos that became confidence. Football has always been a game of control, routes, schemes, precision. But its magic lies in the moments that break the script. This play reminded everyone of that. It reminded fans why we watch, because even in the mess, something beautiful can happen. Pederson later said the play's never dead until the whistle blows. In that 5-second scramble, his quarterback turned top 10 plays list. Analysts broke it down in slow motion, talking about Trevor's awareness, his body control, his balance. But the technical explanation never quite captured it, because what made that moment special wasn't mechanics. It was mindset. It was belief. It was the quiet courage to turn failure into opportunity. For fans in Jacksonville, it was personal. They'd lived through disappointment after disappointment. That touchdown was catharsis, a moment that said, this time things are different. When the team made its late-season push, fans pointed to that play as the spark. Even now, they talk about it like folklore. The night chaos turned into confidence. By season's end, Trevor Lawrence wasn't being introduced as a prospect anymore. He was a leader, a survivor, a quarterback who had faced embarrassment and turned it into highlight film. That goal line stumble became a metaphor for everything he stood for: humility, grit, and growth. The play symbolized a team reborn and a player arriving right on time. Years from now, fans might forget who the opponent was or what week had happened, but they'll remember that play. They'll remember the fumble, the scramble, the impossible stretch, and the eruption that followed. They'll remember how one chaotic second became a snapshot of everything Jacksonville had been fighting for. Was it destiny? Was it luck? Or was it something deeper? A reflection of what football really is? Because sometimes greatness doesn't stride confidently into history. Sometimes it stumbles, falls, and still finds its way to the end zone. That's why this play lives on. It wasn't just Trevor Lawrence scoring a touchdown. It was a young leader turning chaos into clarity, proving that resilience beats perfection every time. It was the night a stumble became a statement, and the Jaguars began to believe in magic again.